the outsider, the fact-free election. Definitely it's been a year of a lot of voter anger, and at least on the Democratic side, there's been a lot of progressive shade thrown at how the Democratic Party picks its nominee. I'm talking about superdelegates. Let's talk about this. Joining me now, Miranda. He's the communications director for the Democratic National Committee and a former advisor to President Obama. So you've heard these complaints about superdelegates. I know that they've been there since the 80s. 84. And one of the complaints from Sanders supporters is that superdelegates subvert the will of actual voters, that the establishment candidate effectively starts a race with 20% of the delegates in his or her pocket. How do you respond?
The reality is that 85% of the delegates at the convention are selected by the results of primaries and caucuses, so the voters themselves are the single biggest factor in who becomes the nominee. Superdelegates, I think one of the problems is the way the media reports it. Any night that you have a primary or caucus, the media lumps in superdelegates that they've basically polled because they just call them up and say, who are you supporting? They don't actually vote until the convention, and so they shouldn't be included in any count on primary or caucus night, because the only thing you're picking on primary and caucus nights are the pledged delegates based on the vote.
But what about when we do our totals? You think it's okay to include?
Not yet, because they're not actually voting, and they're likely to change their minds. You look at 2008, and what happened then was there was all this assumption about what superdelegates were going to do, and many of them did change their mind before the convention, and it shifted the results in the end. But to be clear, the superdelegates have never actually determined who the nominee is since 1984 when they were created, and after 2008, they were actually reduced from 20% to just 15%. And so I think we're in a situation where the voters continue to be the single most important factor. And the purpose of the superdelegates is to make sure that our elected officials and party leaders who are the backbone of the party get to participate at the convention. But it's also good to have them in a separate category because regular folks can run to be delegates at the convention. So you'll see in 2008 we had a 17-year-old who got elected as a pledged delegate who would have never had that chance if he was running against his member of Congress. So it's a way that we do it to make sure that we also have diversity at our convention, because we want the convention floor to look like the rest of the country.
Very interesting. The DNC itself saying don't include superdelegates in the totals to cable networks like our own.
But it's not all rainbows and puppy dogs. We know that, Louise, because Bernie Sanders is upset and his supporters are upset. They are promising havoc at the July convention. Now, if you put the superdelegates to the side, it's only about a 200 or so gap between Sanders and Hillary. And back in April, I have this quote that you said back in April, the superdelegates should not be included in any count or primary or caucus night. The superdelegates, because they can actually change their mind on the convention, right? And they can move from Hillary to Sanders.
It's a really good question, and it's important to clarify. The point that I was making in that interview was that you need to count them separately, because what was happening at the time is that media organizations were conflating delegates that were pledged delegates and unpledged delegates as they were reporting the results in a particular state, and that could wrongly have the effect of suggesting that the delegate totals aren't matching the percentage of the vote totals in a state. So we wanted to be very clear that you have to count those separately. That was really the point of that.
And the broader point, the broader point, Louise, is the people are looking at this, like Bernie Sanders at a rally the other night said, it's just incredible that Hillary Clinton had 400 delegates even before the first vote was passed. So are you going to make changes to this system after this election because so many people call it rigged?
There's always changes to the system, and there's always improvements. After 2008, because of concerns about superdelegates, they were actually reduced from 20% of the total delegates to the convention to just 15% of the delegates. So, we're constantly evaluating and looking at how we can make the system better.